Few things can compare to the cultural and financial impact of a truly brilliant video game. You only need to look as far as 2013's GTA 5, which generated over $6 billion, or the Resident Evil series, which revolutionised the horror genre, to see that. But some games earn their place in history for other reasons. These games have earned very little money, made no positive impact, and are best known for being digital abominations. Number 10. Dead Rising 4. Dead Rising 1 and 2 were brilliant. Dead Rising 3 was a welcome addition to the franchise, but Dead Rising 4 was a mess that shouldn't have seen the light of day. If Dead Rising 4 was a zombie, it would be the infected child who kills everyone in the safe room because their parents can't bring themselves to pull the trigger. They didn't stop it in time, and their recklessness exposed everyone. Number 9. Amy. This imaginatively titled survival horror doesn't look that bad for an independent 2012 game, but it's frustrating to play, with terrible mechanics, stealth that doesn't work, and a story that's laughably bad. The glitches seem to have been patched out, but what remains is still an incredibly dull game. It's no wonder the developers went bust less than 2 years after its release. Number 8. Ashes Cricket 2013. This game was so hilariously bad that the developers quickly pulled it from sale, apologised for ever releasing it, and offered everyone full refunds. Ashes Cricket 2013 was only available for a few days on Steam, and technically it wasn't even finished, but they chose to release it nonetheless, and that's why they've earned a place on our list. Number 7. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. Tony Hawk's is one of the few franchises that proved repetition could be fun. We can't tell you how many times we won doing the same 360 melon on every single obstacle, but Pro Skater 5 killed this franchise and crapped all over the good memories we had of it. Due to a licensing issue, the release date was brought forward and the game was shipped unfinished. The developers then released a so-called patch that was actually the full game. This was great news for players with online access, but anyone who bought the CD and had no plans to go online basically paid the full price for a demo. Number 6. Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem Forever promised so much and delivered so little. It spent over a decade in development hell. By the time it was released, the previous generation of gamers had forgotten the titular character ever existed, and the new generation were completely oblivious to his gum-chewing, arse-kicking ways. It was a generic, linear shooter that offered nothing new and borrowed from themes and mechanics that were already obsolete. It had also lost a lot of its humour, and the story fell flat. Number 5. Aliens, Colonial Marines. A regular feature on lists like this, Colonial Marines was an overhyped mess of bad mechanics, mindless AI, dull gameplay, and frustrating bugs. In 2018, a modder studying the game's code discovered that the terrible AI was actually the result of a simple typo, something which should have never made it into the final release, but was evidently missed by developers. Number 4. Rugby 15. There hasn't been a good rugby game since Codemasters released Jonalumu Rugby in 1997. This is a sport that is very difficult to adapt to the virtual world, but no one has failed as spectacularly as HB Studios with this 2015 effort. It's not only the worst rugby game we've played, it's the worst sports game, and we've played some stinkers. The graphics are dated, the game is confusing, and the basic rules of rugby are completely ignored. Number 3. Raven's Cry. Raven's Cry was an open-world pirate game released in 2015. The screenshots and the premise were enough to draw many players in, but while most of those players expected another Black Flag, what they got was an offensive, bland shambles. The story introduced elements seemingly at random, as if half the cutscenes and dialogue had been omitted. The voice acting was atrocious and the combat was dull and poorly executed. To make matters worse, the game was loaded with racism, homophobia and sexism. We get that pirates weren't exactly politically correct, but there wasn't a single redeeming character in Raven's Cry, which makes it a hard slog for anyone with any cultural sensitivity. Number 2. Ride to Hell, Retribution. Ride to Hell is so bad it's actually quite entertaining. It's the video game equivalent of The Room.
What a story, Mark.
And just like the aforementioned cult film, it's a mass of terrible dialogue, random sex scenes, and a story seemingly written on the fly. Ride to Hell has garnered somewhat of a cult following, but critics annihilated it, and it has a Metacritic score of 16 out of 100. Number 1. Postal 3. Postal 2 was every sociopath's wet dream. You could do anything, kill anyone, and generally be the worst person on earth. It was insane, it was disgusting, and we loved it. We were one of the many gamers eagerly awaiting the release of Postal 3, and when that finally happened after an 8-year wait, we were just as disappointed as everyone else. The game looks okay, and some of the elements that made the series great are still there, but the movement is clunky, the game mechanics are awful, and the game itself is riddled with bugs. Thanks for watching another Daily Top 10's Top 10 video, and remember, it's our duty to entertain, and yours to subscribe.